Welcome to Famous People, English Stories. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
Introduction. In this story, you'll meet a quiet boy named Kian. A boy who was overlooked, underestimated, even laughed at. But instead of breaking, he built something powerful. Not muscles. Not status. He built a mind so steady, so sharp, so strong, that it began to scare people. Not because he was loud, but because his silence had power. His focus had weight. And his presence changed rooms without saying a word. This is not just a story about success. It's about mental strength, discipline, and becoming the kind of person even fear steps aside for. Whether you're learning English or learning life, this story is for you. Chapter 1: The Boy with No Voice. In a small town surrounded by mountains, there lived a boy named Kian. He was not like the other children. He was quiet, always watching, always thinking. While others laughed and played, Kian often sat alone reading, writing, or simply watching the world. People called him strange. Some even whispered, "That boy is too quiet. There's something wrong with him." But there was nothing wrong with Kian. He was building something inside, something powerful. You see, Kian wasn't born strong. He was shy, often afraid to speak. In school, when the teacher asked questions, he looked down at his desk. His heart beat fast. His hands trembled. He wanted to speak, but the words got stuck in his throat. One day, after a terrible moment in class where he couldn't answer a simple question, he ran home and locked himself in his room. Tears ran down his face. He stared at the ceiling and thought, "Why can't I be like everyone else? Why am I so weak?" But then, something shifted. His father knocked on the door. "Kian," he said, "come outside. I want to show you something." Reluctantly, Kian followed. His father pointed to a tree in their backyard. It was tall, strong, and beautiful. "Do you know how this tree got so big?" he asked. Kian shook his head. "Wind," his father said. "Storms. Pressure. Every time the wind pushed against it, the tree pushed back. Its roots grew deeper. Its trunk grew stronger. Life tested it, and it became unbreakable." Kian looked up at the tree. It stood still, silent, and powerful. That night, he made a decision: "I will become strong. So strong that no one will ever laugh at me again. So strong that even fear will be afraid of me." The next day, he woke up before sunrise. He opened a notebook and wrote one sentence: "Build a mind so strong it scares people." That was the beginning. He started small. Every day, he did one thing that scared him. Just one. He raised his hand in class, even if his voice shook. He read out loud, even if he stumbled on the words. He stared at himself in the mirror and practiced speaking. His voice was weak at first, but he kept going. Weeks passed. Months passed. He read books about the mind, about confidence, about human strength. He trained his body too, running, lifting, pushing himself past limits. He didn't do it to impress anyone. He did it because he had a war to fight, the war inside his mind. He stopped caring what people thought. He stopped needing approval. And slowly, the fear that had once controlled him began to shrink. People noticed. Teachers noticed. Even the kids who once laughed at him began to feel something different when Kian walked into the room. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pride. It was power. Calm, quiet power. One day, a boy in school who used to bully Kian walked up to him and said, "What happened to you, man? You're different." Kian looked at him with calm eyes and said, "I met the wind." Chapter 2: The Mirror Test. Kian's journey didn't get easier. In fact, it got harder. But something inside him had changed. He no longer ran from discomfort. He walked toward it. Every morning, before the sun touched the sky, he stood in front of a mirror. At first, he hated what he saw. A skinny boy. Tired eyes. A voice barely strong enough to speak full sentences without shaking. But he kept showing up. This became known, in his own mind, as the mirror test. He would look himself in the eyes and ask, "Who are you?" And every day, he gave a stronger answer. "I am the one who refuses to break. I am the one building a fortress inside. I am the one fear cannot touch." He didn't wait for confidence to magically appear. He built it brick by brick. He studied public speaking at night, practicing speeches alone in his room. He recorded his voice and played it back, even though it embarrassed him. He wanted to understand every weakness so he could crush it. His words slowly grew clearer, bolder, louder. He started raising his hand more in class, now with purpose, not fear. And sometimes, he even helped other shy students find their voice. But there was more work to be done. Kian understood something most people ignored. If you want to build a mind so strong it scares people, you must face the parts of yourself you wish didn't exist. One day, while walking home from school, he passed by a group of older students. They were loud, laughing, and pointing at him. "Hey! There's the quiet freak," one of them yelled. Kian paused. In the past, he would have kept walking. Maybe cried later. Maybe cursed himself silently for not being stronger. But not today. He walked toward them. Calmly. His heart beat fast, but his steps were steady. He stopped just a few feet away and looked them in the eyes. "You think silence is weakness," he said. "But silence is control. You think your loud voice makes you strong. It just means you're scared someone might listen to someone else." They were silent now. Not because he was threatening, but because he was unshaken. Then he turned and walked away. Power isn't loud. Sometimes, it's just the ability to walk away with your head high, leaving people speechless in your wake. That night, in his journal, Kian wrote, "Real strength is not about muscles or words. It's about control. The power to choose your response. The ability to stay calm when chaos surrounds you." Each day, his routines grew stronger. He treated his mind like a warrior trains with his sword. He didn't waste energy on gossip, drama, or doubt. He focused on his breath, his habits, his discipline. Soon, he realized something strange. People were changing around him. Not because he told them to. Not because he tried to impress them. But because they felt his presence. He wasn't just respected. He was watched. Teachers gave him more responsibility. Classmates asked for advice. The same people who once ignored him now listened when he spoke, even if he only said a few words. Because when Kian spoke, it mattered. But Kian wasn't done. No. This wasn't the final form of his mind, it was only the foundation. Because what scared people wasn't his strength. It was how silent, how focused, how completely committed he was to becoming unstoppable. And people fear what they can't understand. Chapter 3: Alone, Not Lonely. Kian was no longer the same boy who used to sit at the back of the classroom, hiding from questions. He had become something different. Not louder. Not flashier. But deeper. His thoughts had weight. His words had power. His silence now spoke louder than most people's noise. But with strength came something unexpected: distance. The stronger his mind became, the more alone he felt. Not because he pushed people away, but because he saw the world differently now. The games that others played, fitting in, showing off, following trends, they didn't interest him anymore. And the more he stepped away from the crowd, the more the crowd whispered. He thinks he's better than us. Why doesn't he hang out like he used to? He's too serious now. Kian heard it all. But he didn't let it in. Because he had learned one of the hardest lessons in life: you must be willing to stand alone to become truly powerful. He still showed kindness. He still helped others when they needed it. But he no longer needed people's approval. He didn't need to be seen. He didn't need to be liked. He needed only one thing: progress. He trained harder than ever. He now woke up at 4:30 a.m., before the rest of the world, to write, read, and run. Not because someone told him to. Not because he wanted attention. Because it made him sharper. More focused. More alive. He gave himself rules. No social media before 10 a.m. No complaining, ever. Write one page every day. Do one hard thing every morning. These weren't punishments. They were promises. Promises to the version of himself that he was building, the unbreakable version. But the world doesn't cheer for quiet growth. It notices the results, not the process. So when Kian began scoring top in his class, people said he was lucky. When he got accepted to an elite leadership camp, people said he had connections. But luck had nothing to do with it. Kian had bled for this mentally, emotionally, physically. One day, at the camp, he was placed in a team of students from across the country. Talented, bold, and smart. But on the first day, chaos erupted. Arguments. Ego. No one wanted to listen. Kian watched. He said nothing at first. Until the group reached a dead end. Then he stood up and said, "We are wasting energy fighting for attention. Let's use that energy to solve problems instead." Everyone paused. His voice wasn't loud. But it landed. He then laid out a strategy. Clear, simple, effective. He didn't order anyone. He just spoke with purpose. And one by one, they listened. Not because he forced them to. But because his calm mind created clarity where there was confusion. By the end of the week, their team was ranked number 1. One of the instructors pulled him aside. "You have something most people never develop," she said. Presence. When you walk into a room, people pay attention even before you speak. Kian nodded, but he didn't smile. Because he knew the truth. You don't get presents by being loud. You get it by being solid. That night, he wrote in his journal again. Alone is not empty. It is full of truth. I am not lonely. I am aligned. If the price of strength is silence, I will pay it. Every day. As others partied, chased attention, or drowned in distractions, Kian kept building. Not for applause. Not for followers. But for that one moment in the future, when everything would be tested. When the world would shake and he would not. Because the strongest minds aren't built in public. They are built in silence. In struggle. In solitude. Chapter 4: The Collapse. Kian had come far. His mind was sharper than ever. His discipline unshakable. People respected him. Some admired him. Others feared him, not because he was cruel, but because he had become something rare, a person who was in complete control of himself. But then came the collapse. It started with a phone call. His father had collapsed at work. A heart condition. Critical. In one moment, everything that had felt stable cracked. Kian dropped everything. Rushed to the hospital. Hours turned into days. Days into weeks. He sat beside the hospital bed, holding his father's hand, reading to him, sometimes just sitting in silence, watching the machines beep and blink. The doctors gave updates. Some hopeful. Some not. Kian didn't cry. He didn't scream. But inside, something was tearing. And for the first time in a long time, fear whispered in his mind again. What if I lose him? What if nothing I've built matters? What's the point of strength if it can't save the people you love? One night, he left the hospital room and walked outside. The sky was dark. Cold wind cut through his coat. He sat on a bench and looked up at the stars. He felt small. Powerless. And for the first time in years, he questioned everything. Then, a memory surfaced, the old tree in his backyard. His father's words. The wind makes the tree stronger. He closed his eyes. This is the wind, he thought. Not the soft wind of daily stress. This is the storm. The real test. The moment I was preparing for. Strength wasn't about being emotionless. It was about not letting emotion control you. So he returned to the hospital room with steady hands. He took care of his mother. Helped the nurses. Read medical books to understand what was happening. And most importantly, he stayed grounded. He did not panic. And slowly, day by day, his father began to recover. Kian had survived the storm, not untouched, but unbroken. But the world wasn't done testing him. When he returned to school, everything had changed. His grades had slipped. Deadlines were missed. Friends had drifted. He had to start over. Many would have broken here. Used it as an excuse to give up. But not Kian. He remembered his journal. His rules. His reason. He woke up even earlier. Caught up on every subject. Met with teachers after class. Took extra assignments. He didn't complain. He didn't explain. He just worked. And he didn't tell anyone about the hospital, the pain, the fear. Why? Because true strength doesn't beg for sympathy. It grows in silence. 3 months later, Kian stood on the stage at a regional academic conference. He had been invited to speak about resilience and leadership. Hundreds of students from across the country sat in the audience. He stepped up to the microphone, looked around, paused, then said, "I used to think fear was the enemy. I was wrong. Fear is the mirror that shows you who you really are. And pain? Pain is the gate you pass through to meet your highest self." He didn't speak like a student. He spoke like a soldier of the mind. And the room listened. Not to the words alone, but to the weight behind them. Later that day, a girl approached him and said, "You scare me a little." Kian smiled, not with pride, but understanding. He replied, "That's not fear. That's respect, for someone who has walked through fire and didn't burn." That night, alone in his room, he opened his old journal. The first page still held the sentence he wrote years ago. "Build a mind so strong it scares people." And below it, for the first time, he added, "But never let that strength become arrogance. Let it become light, for others lost in the dark." Chapter 5: The Unseen Crown. Years passed. Kian was no longer a boy. He had become a young man. Not famous. Not a celebrity. But known. Quietly, respectfully, known. In schools, teachers used his name in stories about discipline. In local events, his presence alone brought order. Even adults who once looked down on him now listened when he spoke. But Kian didn't chase attention. He never did. He still woke up early. Still wrote every morning. Still trained his mind and body like a soldier preparing for battle, because he knew, life never stops testing you. One evening, Kian visited his old school. He stood at the edge of the playground where he once sat alone, reading while the others played. He looked around. Memories returned, painful ones, powerful ones. And then he saw him. A small boy, sitting on the bench where Kian used to sit. Alone. Silent. Staring at the ground. The same look Kian once wore, the look of someone fighting a war inside their own mind. Kian walked over and sat beside him. The boy glanced up nervously. "You okay?" Kian asked gently. The boy shrugged. Kian didn't pressure him. Just sat there. Quiet. Then said, "When I was your age, I sat here every day. I didn't talk much. People thought I was weak." The boy looked at him. "You don't look weak." "I'm not," Kian said. "But I didn't get strong by being loud. I got strong by staying when it was hard to stay. By working when no one was watching. By facing everything I feared alone." The boy stayed silent. Kian continued, "You don't need to be like them. You just need to build something inside you. Piece by piece. One strong thought at a time." The boy nodded slowly. Kian smiled and stood. "You already started. You're still here. That's step one." He walked away, leaving behind more than words. He left behind a spark. That night, Kian returned to his room and opened his journal. The final page was blank. He sat for a long time, thinking. Then he wrote, "The mind is a kingdom. If you rule it, nothing outside can rule you. Strength isn't loud. It's not fame. It's not the fear in others' eyes. It's peace in your own. And at the bottom, he wrote, the goal was never to scare people. The goal was to become so steady, so sharp, so free, that fear itself would step aside. Outside, the world kept turning. Loud people shouted. Trends came and went. Chaos rose and fell. But inside Kian's mind, there was only stillness, focus, fire. The kind of mind that changes everything it touches, not with force, but with presence. And the crown he wore? It was invisible. But anyone who met him felt it. Chapter 6, Legacy. Time moved forward, as it always does. Kian never chased the spotlight. But light began to find him. Not the kind that glows on stages or blinks on screens. The kind that grows in people. Quietly. From the inside out. Years after graduating, Kian returned to his town, not because he had to, but because something was calling him back. The streets were the same. The buildings unchanged. But he had changed. And now, he saw everything through a different lens. He walked through the school hallways where he once felt invisible. But now, every step he took left something behind, influence. There was a new generation here now. A new group of quiet ones. Misunderstood ones. The ones who carried heavy minds but had no words to explain them. And Kian knew exactly who they were. He didn't walk in like a hero. He walked in like a gardener, with patience, humility, and a clear purpose. He volunteered to run a program called Inner Fortitude. Not a flashy club. No fancy logo. Just a circle of students meeting twice a week to train their minds like athletes train their bodies. At first, only 3 showed up. They were awkward, shy, and unsure of why they came. Kian didn't lecture. He simply asked questions. What do you believe about yourself that isn't true? When was the last time you did something hard on purpose? What scares you more, failure or being seen trying? There were long silences. Nervous laughter. But no pressure. Just space. Over time, more students came. Not because they were told to, but because word spread. Not about Kian, but about what people felt in the room. Safe. Seen. Strong. He taught them journaling techniques that had shaped his own mind. He guided them through controlled silence, minutes of stillness that felt like hours. He challenged them to do one brave thing every week, no matter how small. And slowly, he watched them rise. One boy, who once had panic attacks when asked to speak, gave a full 5-minute talk in front of the group. Another, who hadn't turned in a single assignment all year, suddenly became a top student. Not because of pressure, but because someone finally believed he could. One day, a teacher asked Kian, "What's your method?" He simply said, "I teach them how to become the person they needed when they were lost." It wasn't about giving answers. It was about handing them a mirror and showing them the power already inside. Kian never took credit. When students succeeded, he said, "That was you. You did that." But his legacy was written in their eyes. In their posture. In their newfound quiet strength. Then came a moment he hadn't expected. One of his students, a girl named Hannah, asked him after a session, "Why do you do this? You could be anywhere. Doing anything. Why here?" Kian looked at her. Thought for a long time. Then said, "Because someone out there is building a world that will try to break your mind. And if I can help build one so strong that it doesn't bend, that doesn't break, that doesn't forget its worth, then I've done something worth more than gold." Hannah didn't reply. She just nodded, holding back tears. That night, Kian walked alone down the street he grew up on. The stars were above. The wind was cool. And for the first time, he felt something he hadn't felt even during his greatest victories. Peace. Because legacy is not what people say about you when you're gone. Legacy is how people live differently because you were here. Epilogue: The Fire and the Whisper. Years from now, no statue would be built for Kian. No viral video would capture his story. No grand headlines would echo his name. But in quiet corners of the world, inside notebooks, in midnight thoughts, in trembling hands finally raised in courage, he lived. Because Kian had built more than strength. More than reputation. He had built a movement, the kind that moves through people, not crowds. It begins when a student sits down to write their first journal entry, unsure if they even matter. It grows when a shy voice is heard for the first time, and doesn't crack. It becomes real when someone chooses discipline over drama, focus over fame. They don't call it Kian's way. They just call it growing up strong. And somewhere, far from the noise, someone opens a notebook, writes a single sentence, and means it. Build a mind so strong it scares people. Not to dominate. Not to impress. But to protect peace. To create clarity. To become the eye in the storm, not the storm itself. This is the legacy. Not loud. Not bright. But unforgettable. Because fire doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And still lights the world. If this story lit a fire in you, don't let it fade. Comment below, what are you building inside yourself today? Write your own sentence, build a mind so strong it. Fill in the blank. Make it yours. Subscribe for more powerful English stories that grow not just your language, but your life. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because your journey doesn't stop here. Neither does ours. Until next time. Stay focused. Stay silent. Stay strong.